What happens when a 14-year-old girl becomes pregnant by another 14-year-old, gets abandoned by the father, and then has to raise one of hip-hop's most controversial figures completely alone? The answer is sitting in a Florida jail cell right now, facing the death penalty for allegedly murdering his two best friends. YNW Melly, real name Jaime Demons, has been behind bars for over 2,300 days, but the real story isn't just about what he allegedly did. It's about how two teenagers from Ohio created a perfect storm that would eventually produce a musical genius with a dark side that terrifies even his biggest fans. His father, Dante Taylor, disappeared when Melly was born, only to resurface years later when his son became famous, even going as far as making a remix to Murder on My Mind and exposing family secrets in interviews for clout. His mother, Jaime Demons, was forced to raise 3 children alone in one of Florida's most dangerous neighborhoods while working as an ICU nurse, often leaving young Melly unsupervised for hours. But here's what's really disturbing. The parenting decisions that shaped Melly's childhood might have directly contributed to the violent tendencies that landed him in this situation. Stay until the end, because I'm about to break down exactly how two parents' choices created one of the most tragic stories in modern hip-hop. To understand YNW Melly's story, we have to go back to Elyria, Ohio in the mid-1990s, a small industrial city where two teenagers were about to make decisions that would change everything. Jaime Demons and Dante Taylor weren't even supposed to meet. They were both attending school in Elyria when fate intervened through their siblings. Jaime's older sister was dating Dante's older brother, and through these family connections, the two teenagers got to know each other. Picture this, 2 kids, barely in high school, hanging out because their siblings were together. Jaime was young, probably around 13 or 14, while Dante claims he was barely 14 when everything happened. These weren't mature adults making calculated decisions. These were children who had no idea they were about to create one of hip-hop's most controversial figures. According to Dante's own testimony and interviews, their relationship developed naturally. They went to school together, hung out in the same circles, and eventually became romantically involved. But what started as teenage puppy love quickly became something much more serious when Jaime discovered she was pregnant. At 14 years old, still in 8th or early 9th grade, Jaime found out she was carrying Dante's child. Think about that for a moment. Most 14-year-olds are worried about homework and who they're going to sit with at lunch. Jaime was about to become a mother, but here's where the story takes its first tragic turn. According to Dante, the moment Jaime's mother found out about the pregnancy, she made a decision that would shape Melly's entire life. She was moving Jaime away from Ohio, away from Dante, away from everything familiar. Dante claims in his interviews that Jaime was only like maybe a month pregnant when she found out, and then her mother avoided her to go live in Florida where their grandma lived. This wasn't a gradual transition or a planned move. This was an immediate evacuation. Jaime's mother was probably trying to protect her daughter, give her a fresh start away from the situation and the boy who got her pregnant. But what she couldn't have known was that this decision would leave Melly fatherless from birth and create resentment that would last for decades. When Jaime arrived in Gifford, Florida, she was entering one of the most challenging environments imaginable for a pregnant teenager. Gifford isn't just poor, it's systematically impoverished with limited opportunities and high crime rates that would make national headlines for all the wrong reasons. Jaime's grandmother lived in this small, predominantly black community in Indian River County, and this is where Jaime would give birth to Jaime Maurice Demons on May 1st, 1999. She was still 14 years old, still in 9th grade, and now completely responsible for another human being. The poverty was immediate and crushing. Jaime has described in interviews how they could barely afford housing and basic necessities. The family, Jaime, her mother, and baby Melly, struggled so badly that they eventually had to move to an even poorer part of Gifford because they couldn't keep up with rent payments. Imagine being 14 years old, having just given birth, and being told you have to move again because your family can't afford the $400 rent. Jaime later described being terrified during this period. She was barely responsible for herself and now had to figure out how to raise a baby. Her first job was at Dunkin' Donuts, making minimum wage while trying to finish high school. Her mother helped raise Melly while Jaime worked and attended classes, but this arrangement meant that baby Melly was often being cared for by his grandmother rather than his actual mother. This is crucial to understanding Melly's later behavior. From birth, he was experiencing instability. His father was completely absent, not by choice initially, but absent nonetheless. His mother was working constantly just to survive. His primary caregiver was his grandmother, who loved him but couldn't provide the structured parenting a child needs. Jaime eventually built a career as an ICU nurse, which showed incredible resilience and work ethic. Nursing school while raising a child as a teenager, that's almost impossible. But the demanding nature of ICU nursing meant long shifts, night shifts, weekend shifts, times when young Melly was left unsupervised or with minimal supervision. The Gifford environment made everything worse. As Jaime herself explained, Gifford can make you or break you. There is nothing to do, so you either got to put your head on straight and focus on your education, find something you love, or you're going to find yourself in the streets. Despite Jaime's best efforts, Melly found himself in the streets, and when we look at his childhood, it's not hard to understand why. While Jaime was working double shifts at the hospital, trying to build a career that could support her growing family, young Melly was essentially raising himself in one of Florida's most dangerous neighborhoods. By age 5, Melly had discovered his gift for music. At family gatherings, when he would sing, people would praise him and make him feel special. For the first time in his young life, he felt seen, he felt valued. Music became his refuge from a reality that was already showing him too much pain and struggle. But music wasn't enough to fill the void left by absent parents. Melly became obsessed with Michael Jackson, watching videos of MJ performing, mesmerized by how this man could control a crowd. He studied MJ's dance moves, practiced them in front of mirrors, imagined himself on that stage. He also loved Chris Brown, another artist who could sing and dance, who came from nothing and became everything. As he got older, Melly gravitated toward hip-hop, Lil Wayne, Gucci Mane, Young Thug. These were rappers who talked about the streets, about struggle, about pain, things Melly understood intimately. Around 8 to 9 years old, he started writing poetry as a way of processing the chaos around him, the violence he witnessed, the poverty he lived in, the absence of his father. But here's where Jaime's work schedule became a critical factor. ICU nurses work 12-hour shifts, often at night. When you're a single mother with 3 children, Jaime had 2 more kids over the years. Brandon King, who became YNW Slime, and daughter Jasmine. Those work schedules mean your children are unsupervised for long periods. In a stable neighborhood with good schools and positive influences, this might be manageable. In Gifford, it was a recipe for disaster. At age 9, let that sink in, 9 years old, Melly joined the Bloods gang. Specifically, the G-Shine Blood set that had a strong presence in Gifford. But here's what people outside of places like Gifford don't understand. Joining a gang at that age wasn't really a choice, it was survival. In Gifford, if you weren't affiliated, you were a target. You needed protection. You needed to belong somewhere. The older boys in the neighborhood, the ones with money and cars and guns, they were the only successful role models young kids could see. For a fatherless boy looking for brotherhood, looking for protection, looking for respect, the gang offered everything his life lacked: protection from rival gangs and street violence, brotherhood with older members who acted like big brothers, identity as part of something bigger than himself, money through street activities, and respect, even if it was fear-based. At 9, Melly wasn't out there shooting people or selling drugs, but he was being socialized into that world, learning the hand signs, learning the terminology, learning that violence was how you solve problems, learning that loyalty meant everything, even if it meant going to prison or dying. This is where Jaime's parenting approach becomes questionable. She knew Melly was getting involved with the wrong crowd, but her response was often to work more hours to afford to move to better neighborhoods rather than addressing the root cause. Melly needed supervision, structure, and a father figure. While Melly was growing up fatherless in Gifford, Dante Taylor was back in Ohio, living his own life and building his own narrative about what happened. According to Dante's interviews, he never abandoned his son. He was legally prevented from being involved. Dante claims that when Jaime moved to Florida, he tried to establish paternity and get visitation rights. He went to a lawyer in Ohio and was told it would be impossible for him to open a court case in Florida from Ohio and go back and forth every week for a court case. So instead of fighting for custody or moving to Florida to be near his son, Dante made a decision that would haunt their relationship forever. He agreed to pay child support, but gave up on trying to see Melly regularly. "I started paying my child support," Dante said in interviews. "Throughout that time, it was hard because you're paying for a kid that you lawfully can't see the way you want to see." But here's where Dante's story becomes problematic. He admits that he communicated with Melly on a regular basis, even growing up, but also acknowledges that Jaime was territorial as a mother and didn't want him involved. The most damaging part of Dante's testimony involves an incident when Melly was just 1 year old. The most embarrassing example of Dante's clout-chasing behavior came after Melly was arrested for murder in February 2019. Instead of quietly supporting his son or working behind the scenes, Dante decided to capitalize on the situation by releasing his own music. In 2019, Dante released a song called Melly on My Mind, a clear play on his son's hit Murder on My Mind. The song was supposedly a tribute to his incarcerated son, but the timing and execution made it look like a desperate grab for attention. The audio quality was poor, the production was amateur, and the lyrics were more about Dante's own pain than supporting Melly. When people criticized the song, Dante defended it by saying, "That was straight from my heart. I put that song out when I sat down with Lay Black and I was like, man, I need to do something for my son that's gonna uplift his spirit." But Dante's own words reveal the real motivation. He admitted, "We put the song out just hoping that he would hear it. It didn't matter if I did the song in my bathroom or on the computer. I just wanted it to reach my son." The problem wasn't the sentiment, it was the execution and timing. Instead of a private letter or working through proper legal channels to support his son, Dante chose to make his support public and monetizable. The situation got worse when Dante started doing interviews, including the extensive one where he aired out all the family's dirty laundry. He talked about Jaime's parenting, revealed details about Melly's childhood, and essentially threw his son's mother under the bus while positioning himself as the victim. "She don't want nobody to know the truth," Dante said about Jaime. In the media, if you notice, everybody that's watching, what has Melly ever said about his upbringing, about his parents? He never spoke about it because his mother had him thinking the right thing to do was to bottle it up and not talk about it. This public airing of family business while Melly was facing the death penalty showed exactly why Jaime had kept Dante away in the first place. Instead of supporting his son during the most difficult period of his life, Dante was using the situation to build his own profile and settle old scores with Jaime. Even more telling was Dante's response to accusations of clout chasing. "First of all, they said clout chasing when it comes to my son. I can never be clout chasing. If it hadn't been me that would have been in the situation that my son is in, me knowing that my son is talented, I would have brought my son with me." This statement reveals Dante's fundamental misunderstanding of the situation. He saw Melly's success as something he should have been part of from the beginning, rather than something Melly achieved despite his father's absence. While Dante was in Ohio making excuses and eventually chasing clout, Jaime was in Gifford trying to raise 3 children alone while working one of the most demanding jobs in healthcare. The picture that emerges is of a woman who was doing her absolute best in an impossible situation, but whose choices may have inadvertently contributed to Melly's problems. As an ICU nurse, Jaime was working 12-hour shifts, often at night, often on weekends. ICU nursing isn't just any job, it's life or death decision-making. Constant stress, emotional trauma from watching patients die, and physical exhaustion from being on your feet for half a day straight. When you're a single mother with 3 children and you're working these kinds of hours, something has to give. And unfortunately, what gave was supervision of her children during their most formative years. Jaime had Brandon, YNW Slime, and Jasmine, YNW Jewel, after Melly, which meant she was juggling 3 kids while building her nursing career. The financial pressure was enormous. She was the sole provider for her family, trying to keep them housed, fed, and clothed in an area where opportunities were limited. But here's where Jaime's parenting approach becomes problematic. Instead of addressing Melly's behavioral issues directly, she often tried to solve problems by working more hours to afford better living situations. When Melly got in trouble at school, her solution was to move to a different neighborhood. When he started hanging with gangs, she worked extra shifts to try to move the family somewhere safer. This created a vicious cycle. The more problems Melly had, the more Jaime worked. The more Jaime worked, the less supervision Melly had. The less supervision he had, the more problems he created. Jaime's own social media posts and interviews reveal someone who was overwhelmed but trying to maintain control. She was proud of her nursing career, proud of providing for her children, but also defensive about criticism of her parenting. When Melly started getting arrested as a teenager, Jaime's response was often to bail him out and try to manage the situation privately, rather than seeking professional help or intervention programs. She treated his legal troubles as temporary setbacks rather than warning signs of deeper issues. The most telling example of Jaime's parenting philosophy came in a video that surfaced online where she's arguing with someone, possibly Chaser, one of Melly's friends who was later murdered. In the video, Jaime says, "Don't ever try to come for me because I don't even play them type of games. What the fuck's you got that I ain't got? Oh, you threaten me with your little gun? I got big guns." This video shows Jaime holding what appears to be a Draco, a type of assault weapon, essentially threatening violence against her son's friend. While she may have been trying to protect Melly or defend her family, this kind of response normalized violence and showed that even the adult in the household was solving problems through intimidation and weapons. The video also suggests that there may have been ongoing conflicts between Melly's friends and family members, which could have contributed to the tensions that allegedly led to the murders of Juvie and Chaser. In interviews with her younger son B. Slime, Jaime's parenting style becomes even clearer. When asked about B. Slime's designer clothes, he reveals, "My mama actually chose it. She buys all the designer. I'll be telling her, yo, you can go, like regular clothes sometimes, but it's like I don't really like, I'd rather come to this interview in a polo shirt and some polo sweats and some slides." This shows Jaime's focus on image and material success over substance, the same pattern that may have influenced Melly's relationship with money and status. With an absent father and an overworked mother, Melly found his real family in the streets of Gifford. The YNW Collective wasn't just a rap group. It was a brotherhood of young men who had all grown up in similar circumstances and were trying to survive together. Christopher Juvie Thomas Jr. was from nearby Fort Pierce and became one of Melly's closest friends from childhood. Anthony Chaser Williams was from Gifford, slightly older than Melly, and served as a big brother figure. Cortland Bortland Henry was from the Gifford/Vero Beach area, the same age as Melly, and became his most trusted companion. These weren't just friends, they were survival partners. They grew up in the same streets, faced the same struggles, shared the same dreams of escaping Gifford through music. They were all involved in street life to varying degrees, all trying to figure out how to survive in a place designed to destroy them. The formation of YNW in 2016 represented their collective hope for a better future. YNW stood for Young Nigga World or Young New Wave, depending on who you asked, but it represented their generation. Young black boys from the hood trying to create their own wave, their own movement, their own escape route. This brotherhood filled the void that Melly's biological family couldn't fill. While Jaime was working night shifts and Dante was absent, Juvie, Chaser, and Bortland were there. They recorded music together, got arrested together, faced shootings together, shared dreams together. They had matching tattoos, wore matching chains, lived together at times. Melly even had Juvie and Chaser's names tattooed on his face, something he said in interviews he would only do for people after they died, but in this case, they were alive and well, showing how deep the bond was. In a 2018 interview, Melly explained the face tattoos. "I got Chase right here, that's my brother and my twin. A lot of your friends who passed? No, they're my friends right now. I wouldn't get none of my friends' names tattooed on my face until they died." The interviewer was confused. "So you got living people tattooed on your face?" Melly confirmed, "Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a good friend like you are, apparently." This exchange reveals how deeply Melly valued these relationships, so much that he was willing to permanently mark his face with their names while they were still alive. It also shows his unconventional thinking about loyalty and brotherhood. The YNW Collective became Melly's real family, which makes the allegations against him even more tragic. Prosecutors claim that on October 26, 2018, Melly shot and killed Juvie and Chaser from inside a car, then staged a drive-by shooting to cover up the murders. If true, this would mean that Melly destroyed the only stable family relationship he had ever known. The brothers who had been there when his father wasn't, who had supported him when his mother was working, who had shared his dreams and struggles. He allegedly murdered them in cold blood. The prosecution's theory is that success changed Melly, that money and fame made him paranoid and violent toward the people who had helped him achieve that success. But when you understand the family dynamics that shape Melly's childhood, another theory emerges. Maybe Melly never learned how to maintain healthy relationships because he never had healthy family relationships modeled for him. One of the most interesting aspects of the Demon's family story is how differently Melly's younger siblings turned out, despite growing up in the same environment with the same mother. Brandon King, known professionally as YNWB Slime, was born several years after Melly and has followed a completely different path. While Melly was getting arrested and involved in gang activity, B Slime has managed to build a successful rap career without the legal troubles that plagued his older brother. In interviews, B Slime reveals a very different relationship with their mother and a different perspective on their upbringing. When asked about his childhood, B Slime doesn't mention the same level of unsupervised time or dangerous influences that shaped Melly's early years. My brother had to talk to me, that's how bad it got, because I lost complete interest in music after Vaughn died, after so many people were dying around me with my brother in jail, B Slime explained in a 2023 interview. I don't got him to give me no motivation, he gets timed phone calls, he can't talk to me the way he want to talk to me. This quote reveals several important things about the family dynamic. First, it shows that B Slime had a closer relationship with Melly than Melly ever had with their father. Second, it demonstrates that Jaime learned from her mistakes with Melly and provided better supervision for her younger children. B Slime also reveals that their mother is much more involved in his career and daily life than she was able to be with Melly. She buys all the designer. I'll be telling her, you can go, like regular clothes sometimes. The fact that Jaime is actively involved in B Slime's wardrobe choices and career decisions shows a level of hands-on parenting that Melly never received. By the time B Slime was growing up, Jaime had established her nursing career, was more financially stable, and could provide the supervision that Melly lacked. Jasmine, known as YNW Jewel, has stayed even further away from the street life that consumed Melly. She's focused on her education and has largely avoided the public eye, suggesting that Jaime's parenting improved significantly with her youngest children. The contrast between Melly's path and his siblings' paths supports the theory that Jaime's parenting failures with Melly were largely due to her circumstances at the time, being a teenage mother, working multiple jobs, lacking support systems, rather than inherent character flaws. But it also raises uncomfortable questions about whether Melly's fate was sealed by being the first child, the one who bore the brunt of Jaime's learning curve as a parent. When Melly was arrested for the murders of Juvie and Sack Chaser on February 13, 2019, Jaime's world collapsed. Her son, the one she had sacrificed everything to raise, the one who had finally made it out of Gifford and achieved success, was facing the death penalty for allegedly killing his best friends. But instead of retreating or accepting the situation, Jaime transformed into something she had never been before, a full-time advocate for her son's innocence. In early 2020, Jaime created her Instagram account at JamieEck_YNW with one singular purpose: prove that Melly was innocent and get him released from prison. If you look at Jaime's Instagram, you'll notice something immediately. Every single post includes the hashtag #FreeMelly. Not most posts, not some posts, every single one. This isn't marketing, this isn't branding, this is a mother who will not let the world forget that her son is behind bars for a crime she believes he didn't commit. Jaime's social media presence became a masterclass in crisis management and public advocacy. She posts throwback photos of Melly as a child, shares his music, responds to fan comments, and maintains a constant drumbeat of support for his innocence. But more importantly, she started speaking publicly about their family's story in ways she never had before. Jaime began doing interviews, appearing on podcasts, and sharing details about Melly's upbringing that painted a picture of a loving son who couldn't have committed these crimes. The irony is that Jaime's advocacy for Melly has been more consistent and dedicated than her parenting was during his childhood. The woman who was often absent due to work is now completely present for his legal battle. The mother who struggled to supervise him as a child is now monitoring every aspect of his case. Jaime has also become protective of Melly's legacy in ways that reveal her own guilt about his upbringing. She frequently posts about what a good son he was, how he took care of his family, how he was never violent at home. These posts read like someone trying to convince the world, and maybe herself, that she raised him right. In a 2023 interview, Jaime revealed the extent of her current involvement in Melly's life. "I still haven't spoke to my son. It's been a few months. I actually got to talk to them for probably 3 minutes on Thanksgiving." The fact that Jaime is fighting so hard for phone privileges and visitation rights now, when Melly is 24 years old and facing the death penalty, highlights how absent she was during his formative years when he needed that level of advocacy and protection. Jaime has also had to deal with law enforcement harassment related to Melly's case. In 2023, she was injured during a police encounter where officers allegedly twisted her hand and tore ligaments while trying to seize her phone as part of a witness tampering investigation. Broward police had a warrant out for her phone. They tried to do an illegal search. They grabbed her hand, twisted it, tore some ligaments in her hand, B.S. Lime explained in an interview. This incident shows how Melly's legal troubles have now consumed his entire family, with Jaime becoming a target of law enforcement simply for advocating for her son's innocence. One of the most disturbing aspects of Melly's case has been the treatment he's received while awaiting trial in Broward County Jail. For over 2,300 days, Melly has been held without conviction, and according to his family and legal team, he's been subjected to conditions that amount to torture. In late 2022, a statement was posted on Melly's Instagram account detailing the inhumane treatment he was receiving. Multiple long posts on his Instagram begging for help, citing specific officers that are abusing their powers, mistreating him, revoking his phone access, only letting him out of his cell for 1 hour a day, watching his every move, threatening to beat him up and making sure his family never hears from him, cutting off all his communication with others, and straight up torturing him. The statement describes systematic abuse designed to break Melly's spirit while he awaits trial. This included denial of basic phone privileges to contact family or lawyers, solitary confinement for extended periods, denial of medical care for serious health issues, constant surveillance and harassment by guards, restrictions on legal visits and communication. Jaime confirmed these conditions in interviews. He doesn't have his phone privileges. He doesn't have his secure cost. The only way we can see him is going to the jail. The family's Christmas 2022 visit to the jail, where they held signs outside Melly's window, became a symbol of their desperation to maintain contact with him. "We wrote on signs, 'Merry Christmas,' and I found his window," Jaime explained. "We almost got in trouble actually for finding the window. The medical neglect has been particularly concerning. Melly developed an abscess in his lower jaw due to his diamond dental implants, but was denied proper dental care. He was denied dentist visits, a regular toothbrush or floss because they can be used as weapons, according to reports. This treatment of a pre-trial detainee, someone who hasn't been convicted of any crime, raises serious constitutional questions about cruel and unusual punishment. But it also shows how the system has failed Melly at every level. From his childhood in Gifford to his current situation in jail, the case against Melly has been built on circumstantial evidence, but prosecutors claim they have substantial proof of his guilt. According to court documents, the evidence includes shell casings found in the car that match Melly's gun, ballistics analysis showing shots came from inside the vehicle, not from an external drive-by, cell phone records placing all 4 men together at the time of the murders, trajectory analysis indicating shots were fired from the left rear passenger seat where Melly was sitting, autopsy results showing the victims were shot at close range, execution style. The prosecution's theory is that Melly shot Juvie and Sackchaser from inside the car, then he and Bortland staged a drive-by shooting to cover up the murders. They drove around for over an hour before arriving at the hospital, allegedly to get their stories straight. But Melly's defense team has maintained his innocence, and his first trial in June to July 2023 ended in a mistrial when the jury voted 9-3 for conviction but couldn't reach the required unanimous verdict. The most devastating blow to Melly's case came in September 2025 when Bortland, his co-defendant and last remaining brother, accepted a plea deal. After 6 years of fighting the case together, Bortland pleaded no contest to accessory to murder after the fact and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors. This means Bortland will likely testify against Melly at his retrial, currently scheduled for January 2027. Under Florida's new death penalty law, prosecutors only need an 8-4 jury vote to sentence Melly to death, making his situation even more precarious. B. Slime addressed the evidence in a 2023 interview. "If y'all just like go read the black and whites, it tells the story itself. This song was like 3 years before the situation. My son was 4 years old when that song was written, before I even met him." He's referring to Murder on My Mind, which prosecutors have used as evidence of Melly's violent mindset. But as B.S. Lime points out, the song was written years before the alleged murders, when Melly was just 16 years old and in juvenile detention. The family maintains that the evidence is circumstantial and that Melly is being railroaded by a system that was determined to convict him from the beginning. As of 2024, Melly faces the very real possibility of execution if convicted. Florida has been aggressive in seeking and carrying out death sentences, and the state's new law requiring only an 8-4 jury vote makes conviction more likely. The psychological toll on the family has been enormous. Jaime has essentially put her life on hold to advocate for Melly's innocence, while B. Slime has struggled with depression and loss of motivation for his own music career. After Vaughn died, after so many people were dying around me with my brother in jail, I don't got him to give me no motivation, B. Slime explained. I lost complete interest in music. My brother had to talk to me, that's how bad it got. The family's Christmas visits to the jail, their constant social media advocacy, and their willingness to speak publicly about the case all demonstrate their belief in Melly's innocence. But they're fighting against a system that seems determined to make an example of him. Jaime's transformation from an overworked single mother to a full-time advocate shows both her love for her son and her guilt about the parenting failures that may have contributed to his situation. She's fighting not just for Melly's freedom, but for vindication of her parenting and proof that the system failed her son, not the other way around. The hashtag Free Melly campaign has become Jaime's full-time job, her identity, her purpose. Every Instagram post, every interview, every public appearance is designed to keep Melly's case in the public eye and maintain pressure for his release. But the reality is becoming harder to deny. With Bortland's cooperation, substantial physical evidence, and Florida's aggressive death penalty stance, Melly's chances of avoiding conviction are diminishing. Melly's story isn't just about one family's dysfunction. It's about the systematic failures that create these tragedies in communities across America. When 14-year-olds become parents, when families are separated by poverty and geography, when children grow up without supervision in dangerous neighborhoods, when the only role models are gang members and drug dealers, when the education system fails to engage at-risk youth, when mental health resources are non-existent, when the criminal justice system focuses on punishment rather than rehabilitation, these are the predictable results. Gifford, Florida, where Melly grew up, is a perfect example of how systemic poverty creates cycles of violence and incarceration. It's a community with limited economic opportunities, failing schools, high crime rates, and minimal social services. For young people growing up there, the streets often provide the only sense of belonging and opportunity they can find. Jaime's struggle as a teenage mother trying to build a career while raising 3 children alone is replicated in communities across the country. The fact that she succeeded in becoming an ICU nurse while raising her children shows incredible resilience, but it also highlights the impossible choices single mothers face between providing financially for their families and being present for their children's emotional and developmental needs. Dante's absence from Melly's life, while partially due to legal and geographical barriers, also reflects broader patterns of father absence in low-income communities. The cycle of teenage pregnancy, family separation, and father absence creates generational trauma that affects children's development and life outcomes. The gang involvement that shaped Melly's childhood is a rational response to an irrational environment. When children don't have stable family structures, when they're unsupervised for long periods, when they need protection and belonging, gangs fill that void. The tragedy is that these survival mechanisms often lead to violence and incarceration. When you examine the full story of YNW Melly's upbringing, what emerges isn't a simple tale of good versus evil, but a complex tragedy of broken systems, impossible choices, and unintended consequences. Dante Taylor was a 14-year-old boy who became a father before he was ready, then was separated from his son by circumstances and geography. Instead of fighting harder to be involved, he gradually accepted his absence and only returned when there was fame and money involved. His clout-chasing behavior after Melly's arrest showed exactly why Jaime had kept him away in the first place. Jaime Demons was a 14-year-old girl who became a mother in one of America's most challenging environments. She worked incredibly hard to provide for her children and build a career, but the demands of survival meant she couldn't provide the supervision and structure her son needed during his most formative years. Her current advocacy for Melly, while admirable, highlights how absent she was when he needed her most. Melly himself was a gifted child who found music as an escape but also found violence as a solution to problems. Growing up without a father figure and with limited supervision, he was socialized by the streets of Gifford rather than by stable family relationships. The YNW Brotherhood became his real family, which makes the allegations against him even more tragic. The tragedy isn't just that 2 young men are dead and another is facing the death penalty. The tragedy is that this outcome was predictable based on the family dynamics that shaped Melly's childhood. When children grow up without consistent parental supervision, when they're raised in environments where violence is normalized, when they form their primary attachments with other unsupervised children rather than stable adults, the statistical likelihood of tragic outcomes increases dramatically. Melly's story is ultimately about the price we all pay when families are broken by poverty, when teenage parents are left to figure it out alone, and when society fails to provide the support systems that could prevent these tragedies. Whether Melly is guilty or innocent of the murders he's charged with, the real crime was committed years earlier when two teenagers created a child they weren't equipped to raise, in an environment that wasn't equipped to support them. The demons that allegedly drove Melly to violence weren't born in a recording studio or a gang initiation. They were born in the absence of his father, in the exhaustion of his overworked mother, and in the streets that raised him when his family couldn't. Slime and Jasmine's different outcomes show that Jaime learned from her mistakes and provided better parenting for her younger children. But for Melly, the first child, the damage was already done. That's the real story of the Demons family. Not just how they raised YNW Melly, but how America's broken systems failed to raise them all. The #FreeMelly campaign continues, with Jaime posting daily on Instagram, maintaining hope that her son will come home. But as the retrial approaches and the evidence mounts, the family must confront the possibility that their advocacy may not be enough to overcome the consequences of choices made decades ago. What do you think? Could this tragedy have been prevented with different parenting choices, or was Melly doomed by circumstances beyond anyone's control? Let me know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind hip-hop's biggest controversies.